Hello, everyone. Welcome to Post in Black. My name is David Hunter Jr., and I am the host of your show today. We are so excited to have you back for another episode. Today, we have Ruel Smith, a great friend of mine, an awesome director, the head of animation and VFX at Stept Studios. He's been an animator for over 16 years, and he's actually been working very heavily in the director field now as he goes to take his career further. Ruel, thank you so much for joining us today, bro.
Thanks for having me, David. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Now I know we know each other pretty well, and we're getting to work together a little bit more, but we're going to dive in so that other people can find out more about you and everything that you have going on. But before we do that, we always here at Post in Black like to start off with a little icebreaker to kind of warm things up. All right. So your icebreaker today is going to pop on the bottom of there. Does your current car have a name? And if so, what is it?
White chocolate.
White chocolate. Okay. Now
I drive a 2009 Toyota hybrid Camry. White.
Okay. All right. Got you. I was going to ask that. And then how did they get that name?
I try to keep a little bit of soul in my cars. The previous one was an Avalon. So I think that name just carried over. I had a white 2002 Toyota Avalon. Huge fan of Toyotas. And so it's been white chocolate. So I just kind of carried that over.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan too. I worked, one of my first jobs was working as a detailer at Toyota when I was 18. So nice. You know how all the cars are parked really nicely in the lot. That was me. I would park them in the lot. So yeah, parallel parking, not an issue.
Nice.
But yeah, that's pretty funny. Well, no, thank you again for joining us. As you know, Post in Black, we like to highlight and celebrate people behind the scenes who are working in post-production that are Black, because that's not something we usually hear about or see. So we're going to dive right in. Tell the people a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you're from.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people don't see that. And even myself being in the industry, you don't see that a lot on the inside of a lot of post folks in Black or Black folks in post. So, Ruel Smith, born and raised in Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica. I was that kid who literally, knucklehead running around Jamaica, being a brat. And then I saw Lion King and I was just like blown away, saying that's what I want to do for a living. I don't know how. And then a couple years later, I migrated to the U.S. I went to, the SutchiLee Tyson Performing and Fine Arts High School in East Orange, named after the late, great SutchiLee Tyson. And that's where I, developed my deeper love for animation. I had a teacher who just started an animation program and he just had us learning animation. And the blueprint for it, because of him, Mr. Vincent Patudo in high school, is where I got a scholarship to go to college in New York City. I majored in computer animation at the School of Visual Arts. And then just like at the time, this is 2004 when I graduated, at the time, the Mecca was LA to be, you have Disney, DreamWorks, you have a lot of other visual effects studios like Sony, Digital Domain that were here. And so the Mecca was to make the pilgrimage to LA, just like an actor or a filmmaker at the time. And so, 2005, $2 in a Dream, I just kind of packed up and moved to LA to pursue my career in animation. And, that's where it started.
Wow. That's an awesome story. First of all, being from Jamaica and then your first film, seeing Lion King, we hear a lot of stories about how that movie impacted people. It's some people's favorite movie of all time, favorite animation film, but how that kind of got the bug started in you saying, hey, I want to do this. Was there something in particular with that film that made you say, I want to do, or did you start researching anything in particular? Or was it just like movies? I want to be a part of that.
I think, so I can tell you the exact scene, just watching the movie and just, being enamored by the story, right? The storytelling and then, the scene where Mufasa, falls off the cliff and then Simba runs up and starts tugging on him. And just the emotion it evoked out of me, I was like, I don't know what the heck this is making me do, but I want to do that. And so the day after, my aunt and my cousins, we all just started drawing Lion King. We just started drawing all the characters. And from there, I got to, just to kind of fast forward a full circle moment. So that was the springboard for me. And then Jurassic Park was the other. So it's one and two is Lion King, Jurassic Park, right?
Okay.
But then fast forward, I'm in the industry, still, entry beginner in the industry. Worked with this black dude, James Paris, and we would play ball at lunchtime. We were at Digital Domain in Venice, and we were on a commercial together. And we were just after work, I would go up to his cubicle and just kind of chit chat. And then I just said, hey, what, you've been in the industry for a while. What's some stuff you worked on? And then he was like, rattling them off, and then he got to Lion King.
Wow.
And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, just humor me. What's the scene that you worked on? What's the shot? And then he mentions the scene where Simba is tugging on Mufasa's ear to say, Dad, wake up. And I just remember pausing and just saying, you literally worked on the scene that made me want to be an animator. And it was another Black guy animator. And so it's just this full circle energy, right? Like, and literally that movie, that scene made me want to be an animator. And then,
and he was an animator. That was his job specifically.
That was his job specifically.
That is crazy. And even, what's crazy how that film is, when you said that scene, the tugging on the ear, what it did, it literally took me back. And I'm not even being funny. It took me back, and I felt those emotions, because you watch that and you're like, man, that's so sad. And that knowing that a Black man was behind that and responsible is something that at 36 years old, I'm just finding out. That's absurd. That's so crazy to me, and it's so awesome. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
So I'm skipping back a little bit. You're out in New York. Went to Cicely Tyson School. Cicely Tyson, amazing, everything that she did in her life. But now you're in LA. How was that transition to come to LA now? Because I know you went to New York. Was it ever an idea like, oh, I need to stay in New York? But you said, oh, people are moving to LA. But did you have connections out here? Like, it can be a hard transition, can it?
Yeah. For me, it's a lot easier when it was the only option at the time. Like now, visual effects is around the world, right? Like you have a lot more VFX on features and animation being done in Vancouver, Montreal, London. But at the time, the Mecca was LA for animation. You had Pixar and ILM up in San Francisco. But we all kind of knew that to make it as an animator, it was LA for the most part. And so I knew I wanted to, the end goal, the end result, the end of the journey, destination was LA. But I ended up getting a scholarship to go to the School of Visual Arts in New York. And so New York, I would say SVA was maybe my number 2 or number 3 on my list. Academy of Art in San Francisco at the time was considered the best for animation, because they were right by ILM and Pixar. Then you had CalArts in LA. And then I would say, School of Visual Arts is in your top 5, but I got a scholarship to go to SVA. And so I just took advantage of that opportunity, but it also gave me an opportunity. I knew this would be the only chance I would get to live in New York. To be an artist in New York City, a training artist in New York City. And so that kind of worked out at that point.
Gotcha. You strike me, and obviously, again, I know you, but you strike me, and I'm even learning more about you. You strike me as a very, very disciplined, very, forward thinking, very tactical type individual. For those that are just learning about you, can you explain to them what VFX is and what actually stood out to you about it to make you even dive into it more? Because they're hearing VFX, they hear animation. For the casual listener, for the casual person watching, they may say, okay, is that just drawing, or what do you do like in the film? What does that actually entail?
Gotcha. Yeah. So obviously most people, when they hear animation, you harken back to the old Disney, the 2D hand drawn, right? And then I would say around the early 90s, probably a little bit, I would say around the early 90s to late 90s, 3D animation and visual effects. 3D being with, Toy Story from Pixar, and then VFX animation being with like Jurassic Park, right? With the dinosaurs. And so VFX is just all the effects that can't be done in camera on set, done visual effects on the computer.
Okay.
And so you're thinking of Titanic, right? You think of Jurassic Park. They didn't, they had to make the dinosaurs. And if you need the dinosaurs to run, the herd of dinosaurs running by the characters as they're running in Jurassic Park, that's all computer generated, right? You think of like an explosion. You think of like a superhero movie where the superheroes, the actors or the stunt can't do certain things on set. So that's recreated in visual effects. And in 3D animation is you have different parts of the pipeline, but within animation, I am the person that brings the character to life. So someone else molds the character, someone else rigs it up with its skeletal structure, someone else adds, what you would consider the makeup, the wardrobe, someone lights the scene, and then I would take that character and then animate it frame by frame.
Now, everything you mentioned, that sounds really awesome. It also sounds, when you say frame by frame, it also sounds like it's very time consuming.
Very time consuming.
How long would a process for this? Because your credentials stem from, we have Jungle Book, we have Daredevil, even Black Panther, some amazing films. What does the timeline look for doing that type of work on these projects?
I mean, it can take, back in the day, it would run like 8 months to be on a project. I mean, now they've kind of figured out technology and they've been able to streamline it so that you can be on a project for like 6, 7, 8 months. That's just within visual effects. That project is probably stemming like 2 to 3 years in the entire thing.
Is that like an 8-hour day? Or these are like 12-hour days.
I mean, yeah, I've done 10-hour days. I've done 12, 14-hour days. I think the craziest days, like stretches I've done, I would say I've done 14-hour days for 21 days straight. And I've done 12-hour, like consecutive days when I say days straight. I've done 12-hour days for 31 days straight.
My goodness.
On certain projects, yeah.
Yeah.
But frame by frame, like when I was animating on Alvin and the Chipmunks, I think it was Shipwrecked. That movie is a 2-hour movie. And then for someone like me, I probably had about 2 minutes of like stuff that I worked on at max in it, maybe less, maybe a minute, between a minute and 2 minutes. So you're thinking, you're animating 24 frames a second, right? Like, and you're crafting that. I could be on a shot that's like a 6-second shot for like 3 weeks.
And that's crazy to me. So how big are these teams? Because obviously it's a team effort to work together on a project like this. How big are these teams that you're on? And are relationships important to get these jobs? Because if that's a job, I'm looking at the timeline, that's a job that you're employed. That's a job that you're getting a check for to do this. So, how big are the teams, and is it important to have those relationships?
Yeah, I mean, the teams are huge. I mean, you ever see the credits? Whenever you get to the part of the movie where the lights come on, they're already sweeping up, inside the movie theater. The music goes off and you just see a wall of like credits. You can easily get up to like 200 people, 100 artists and visual effects artists, spanning over a year and a half working on a movie. So they can get pretty large depending on the scope of the movie.
Wow. Yeah.
Now studios these days, I would say multiple studios work on like, you're thinking like 1,400 shots, visual effects shots. And like, you think of like a Marvel movie, like an Avengers movie or something, like it's about 1,400 shots of visual effects.
That is something that sounds like you have to really love and know what you're getting into, because that's a lot of commitment, a lot of effort, a lot of time.
Something that you had mentioned too, it is who that gets you in the door, and it's what that keeps you in the door. And so relationships are a big part of, this business.
Now explain that, because that's deep. That's deep. The who gets you in, but what do you mean by what that keeps you?
So who that gets you in and what that keeps you in the door. And so, a lot of my early years, and even now, is, you're only as good as your next gig. Right. And so a lot of my early years, it was the people that I graduated college with. Right. Okay. That we were, because it's no one or two people that make a project. Right. So you're going to always need more artists. So, a friend who's in the door that recommends you to the recruiters or to the supervisors, and then you get in the door, and then from there, you've worked at enough places you start building a reputation, and they're always looking for artists. So the relationships of people, other VFX artists, other animators that will recommend you and pass your reel along. But then it's going to take for you to being, a good artist to keep you in the door and to want them to always hire you back.
So you're refining your skill set while you're in there, so that it lends to you continue to go. And I'm skipping ahead from what you said. What keeps you in there, because you come to LA in 2005 and you had that scholarship from school, but now you're making a name for yourself. You're working with friends from college, and we're skipping all the way to present time. You're the director of animation and head of animation and VFX at Stept Studios. What does that look like? I mean, that's like a window of over 15 years, but you've obviously been making an impression in your field to where now you're the director and the head of animation. How was that different from when you first started?
It's the culmination, I would say. I wouldn't say it's different. I would say it's the culmination, because I still pull from my early days, right? Like even on Black Panther, when I was on Black Panther, like I hadn't done a certain, type of VFX.
I'm gonna jump in real quick, because you said that so casual. When I was on Black Panther, I saw Black Panther. I went to the movies and watched it, but I wasn't on it. We worked on an all-time classic. Yeah. Like that's I mean, awesome for you.
I appreciate it. No, yeah, and I had to pull from early parts in my career when I first moved to LA, and so it all is a culmination from your earlier experiences and skill sets and things that you learn to the end, and so to more recent. And so head of animation and VFX, I came in to kind of help the studio build a process and a structure of how we keep the quality and the efficiency of VFX across every commercial or project that comes in the door, and figure out different technical ways to figure out how we would pull off this VFX within the time, within the budget for this particular director or client. And that was not something that I would have been able to do had I not had the experience of being on so many different projects, doing different things, being in different parts of animation and VFX. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where you pull from every part in your tool set.
Yeah. It's funny. I've heard quotes. I love quotes a lot, and I'm not going to say each one of them, but like Peyton Manning, TD Jakes, Michael Jordan, they have all said in their various careers that it's the things you learn along the way. Peyton Manning talked about how, he won a Super Bowl and Super Bowls, but it was all of the losses early on in his career that really taught him how to win. You know what I mean? Michael Jordan talks about how he failed so much, and that's why he became a winner. And so I really think that you're talking about these early jobs that you had that kind of you still pull from, and that's still so what you're saying is nothing that you're going through is wasted. No job is a small job, because it all is adding to the inventory.
Exactly. Every experience helps.
Yeah. Now during this time, what would you say has been the most challenging job that you've had, and the most, I guess, fun job that you had, or the best job you've had?
Gotcha. I think this job I just finished, Riot League of Legends. I came on as a VFX supervisor and a co-director, but mainly I was, had to focus on the VFX supervising, because it was 95% VFX, right? Like it was a character in a green screen volume, and we had to recreate the entire world for this spot. And it was my first foray into the role of VFX supervising on such a really ambitious and technically, challenging project. And doing it in the middle of the pandemic. Everyone is working from home, so having to put the team together, oversee the team. I would say most recent, it was that one. Okay. I worked on a project. It's the Tron game cinematic. It's called Tron Legacy game cinematic that I worked on. And early on in my career, that was one of the, there's a shot on there. It's like a oneer where the guys are riding their motorcycles, and we animated that at full speed in realistic speed within the software. So they were all clocking 200 miles an hour with the camera, and it was to pull that off animating every aspect of that was, I thought that was going to be the end of my career. And so those were a lot of long days. But no, I would say those two would be the most challenging projects that I've ever done. As far as best, I would say Daredevil. It wasn't a very challenging. It was not a very challenging visual effects project. I was a fan. It was the first time I was a fan of a show that was in season 1 had finished, and this was season 2, and I had just finished Daredevil, and it was the sequence where we first saw Punisher in the jail scene, and he's fighting everybody with the shank. And it's that one long scene, and what we had to do was put because they were using fake shanks, just obviously for safety on set, and so I had to tracking and animate in real shanks in everybody's hands, including the ones where he gets stabbed. He gets stabbed and he stabs the guy. And it was this really long sequence for revealing Punisher. And I worked on that at CBS here at the Grove, CBS Digital. And it was just being a fan of a show and then getting to work on the show while you're a fan. That's not normal. Like no one knew Black Panther would be, including, I would say, the director, Ryan Coogler, knew where it would hit until it came out. Like even my friend, I mentioned James Paris about Lion King. He didn't know, they didn't know Lion King would be that when they were working on it. So that was a rare moment for me.
Okay. Nah, that's really good. And like you said, when you're in the moment, you're just trying to do great work. And that make that impact. We're going to switch a little bit, Shep, because obviously we're finding out a lot about you and so many great experiences and just, your knowledge of what you've actually been able to work on and work through. We're posting Black. We're highlighting Black people in post-production because we don't really hear about them. How has it been for you working in this field? Have you seen other people who look like you? Has it been easy to make those relationships? And what do you feel like are the challenges to get Black people into post-production or get the opportunities?
Wow. Yeah, that's a pretty complex and loaded question. I think early on in my career, there was very little. I saw Black folks in VFX and animation. I would always say a lot of times it would either be the front desk, security guard, or janitor, or FedEx. Right. Or delivery. And, so we're few and far in between. And then it's gotten a lot better, way better over the years. I've, come across obviously with more social media and, platforms like Post in Black. You're seeing, Black folks get together and share resources and highlight each other. And so I've seen it grow over. I think, finding platforms like this, tapping into learning from platforms like Post in Black, and just never settling for the limitations to what you see in your community. Like I was when I told my mom at the age of 13, I want to move to California and do cartoons. My mom is a Jamaican mom. She's a nurse. Like that was like saying I want to move to Mars and build a colony, right? Like, so I would say just be optimistic, persevere, and really push through. Don't let someone else's limitations, limit you. That's what I would say.
I love that. Don't let someone else's limitations limit you. In this industry, have you had any mentors in this field as you've been coming up, or anybody you can kind of lean on? And then what does that look like for you now being the director and head of an animation studio? Is that something that's on your mind to try to get back and pull people along as well?
Yes. And obviously it's a lot different now. So early on, Vincent Patudo, my animation teacher in high school, he's probably my biggest mentor, passed away some years ago. But like he was the one that, really pushed me, really, put the battery in my back to say that I can do this. And then throughout, in college, I've had a bunch of, teachers. And then I think once you come in the industry, you work under some great artists that end up becoming mentors, some great leads or some great supervisors that you kind of learn from, and then take their, what they've, helped you with, and advice that they've given, experiences that they've given you, you've moved along. For me, it is, in this day, I feel like, you can find those channels. You can tap into those channels. A lot of the resources now are online to learn. Whereas for me, you had to go to a college back in, 2000 to 2004.
Right.
And so I would say, the sky's the limit. Like, everything that you want to learn or know about is on a phone in your pocket, right? It's on your computer, it's online, and you can find out, you can ask these questions. I would say build a community of artists that want to do the things that you want to do and keep each other accountable. That would be the biggest thing, because your passion and your drive is going to be your moral compass. That's going to be your North Star. You just need to find a community that's going to keep each other accountable to get there.
Right. No, that's powerful. That's powerful. And I guess that's something that, in the grand scheme of what you're saying is do the work. You know what I mean? There's really, there's a lot of challenges that, we may face as, Black people trying to get into a space that really wasn't really there for us in the beginning. But at this time period, like you said, the information is really at the grasp of your phones. It's right there. Research, do the work if you really wanted this opportunity. What does it look like for you moving forward in your career? I know you're, the direct, like, obviously this is not just the pinnacle, but like, where do you see yourself wanting to go and working to go in the next few years?
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I mean, for me, it's, after Black Panther, I was, seeing Ryan Coogler go through that. Seeing someone that looked like me, that sound like me, from a similar neighborhood like me, go through that system, a big system like, Disney, Marvel, and tell his story. And it was as impactful as it was. After that, I was like, okay, I'm ready to tell my own stories as well. And so I've been, on the journey of transitioning into feature film directing. Right. So that's kind of the end goal for me. I'm currently, writing and working on, making my first feature film. You obviously know, you got some insider secrets on you and I, collaborating on a few narrative film projects. But more so for me, it's just becoming a storyteller in my own right, becoming a narrative feature film maker, director.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. I think that you have kind of laid the groundwork. And one thing that people don't understand is that you say, oh, how do you go from post-production and VFX to directing? The grand scheme of everything now. And, you're directing, even if you're directing VFX and animation, it's still a director mindset. It's still laying the groundwork for what you want to do. And I think you kind of have a really strong focus about where you're going. What advice would you give? We'll ask you, what's the best advice that you've been given, but what advice would you give to anyone that's young, like you said, like yourself, when you started, 13, saying they want to work in animation, or college or high school, who's watching this now that says, I want to get into post-production, but where do I start? What would you say to them? Yes.
And it's kind of back to, what we've been talking about, like, all the information is at your fingertips. It's all online. It's in these Facebook groups, LinkedIn. Gnomon Workshop is a good place. It's a visual effects online course, like workshop series that you can, look up. Gnomon, GNOMON. That's a good start. But these Facebook groups, there's a bunch of Facebook groups dealing with visual effects and animation that are just out there, and their communities out there ready to welcome you. I would say, go for it. Trust yourself, trust your gut, and just follow your passion. And to me, it's just, focus on honing your craft, developing your love for what you want to do, and just, trying to be a little bit better than what you were yesterday. It's not an overnight thing. People think I woke up one day and said, oh, I want to be an animator. And then I became an animator. And yeah, I went to a performing and fine arts high school. I went to one of the top colleges in the country to study animation, just to be a starving artist and start out from the bottom, right? Just to get the luxury of being a starving artist. And this is the culmination of, 20 years, over 20 years of loving what I do, being passionate about it, and going after it.
That's powerful. I think a lot of people are going to be impacted by what you had to share today. And so we just want to thank you again, Ruel, for your time and for dropping so much insight, so much wisdom. Where can people find you, follow you, stay in touch with you, and tell them what you're working on next?
Gotcha. Yeah, my handle is Real Ruel, ReelRuel. That's also the name of my website, realruel.com. You can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn.
Okay.
I think those are probably the best social platforms, both professional and social. And then my website.
It's awesome. Like, it's a pleasure, obviously, have you on Posting Black, but working with you outside of this, and we have a lot of things coming up, so we're excited to get it going. So Ruel Smith, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to this powerful episode of Posting Black. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Made for More Entertainment, and we'll be back with another episode of Posting Black. Stay black.